I am a little bit concerned. I have a fear. And it's a reasonable fear. If the past is the best predictor of the future, I have a reasonable fear. And I know a number of you have the same reasonable fear. It's that things are bad for the Democrats. Objectively so, things are bad for the Democrats right now. Joe Biden's popularity is terrible. Inflation is on the rise. Interest rates are going to go up. It's going to provoke a recession. The economy is doing well by the metrics of growth, but people aren't feeling it because of the metrics of inflation. The virus is still around. People are still arguing. In Maryland, they're saying they may make masks a permanent thing. Masks on airlines, the Biden administration is considering making a permanent thing. No way. This is a problem. Things are not going well for the Democrats. Joe Biden's polling is tanking. Republicans are winning on the generic ballot. Republicans are more likely to, voters are to say less likely to hold you in contempt for your economic situation right now. Things are bad, but I have a reasonable fear. Will Republicans snatch defeat from the jaws of victory? There is some polling now that paints a picture out there. And the big national story today is actually where I am in Georgia. Whoever thought Georgia would be the center of the political universe? And usually we're thinking about Florida or Ohio or Pennsylvania, some swingy state somewhere. But Georgia apparently is the median point for politics. And we got to stretch out from there to Arizona, to Pennsylvania, to Ohio. There's data out there across the board. We begin, though, in Georgia because there's a series of national polls that have come out looking at Georgia. And local polls as well. The Quinnipiac poll in Georgia with the University of Georgia and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution poll also with the University of Georgia. Two separate polls shows there's only one person beating Stacey Abrams at a statistical significant margin. That person would be Brian Kemp. In the Quinnipiac poll that has come out in Georgia, David Perdue ties Stacey Abrams. In the Atlanta Journal-Constitution poll that comes out, David Perdue is 3 points better than Stacey Abrams within the margin of error. In the Quinnipiac poll, Brian Kemp beat Stacey Abrams. I want to say it's by 3 or 4 points in the Quinnipiac poll. In the Atlanta Journal poll, he beat her by 7 points. The pollsters note that is a statistically significant difference, unlike Perdue. But there's a problem there. Donald Trump wants to destroy Brian Kemp. For those of you not in Georgia, you need to understand, contrary to what you may have been told, in Georgia, the governor is constitutionally prohibited from doing anything about elections. The Constitution makes it very clear only the Secretary of State can be involved in elections and election processes and the investigations of elections, but that hasn't stopped Donald Trump from claiming otherwise. And his voters are very mad at Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, who is standing between us and Stacey Abrams. Two separate independent polls show that only Brian Kemp can beat Stacey Abrams. Interestingly enough, David Perdue released an internal poll. After Donald Trump convinced David Perdue to get into the Republican primary, David Perdue made his case to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and said, see, I'm the only one who can beat Stacey Abrams. Not only that, but I am statistically significantly ahead of Brian Kemp in the poll. If you take David Perdue's polling, his own internal polling he was proud of, and you compare it to the Quinnipiac poll and the AJC poll, there's been an absolute collapse of support for David Perdue. David Perdue had himself beating Brian Kemp 46-36. In the AJC and the Quinnipiac poll, he's now losing. There's been an 11-point shift to Brian Kemp away from David Perdue based on his internal polling, and a 10-point collapse for David Perdue. Based on David Perdue's own polling, it's his own polling. I'm not making this up. It's not someone else's poll. It's David Perdue's poll. When you take it, and then you take either the Quinnipiac poll or you take the AJC poll, he's absolutely collapsed. But here's the problem, and this is where we get to, and this is how it becomes a national story. is that there's growing angst within the Republican ranks. Now, the AJC poll has Brian Kemp's approval at 48%. The Quinnipiac polling has it less than that and shows it's Republicans who are divided on Brian Kemp. Independent voters, moderate voters, suburban voters, conservative voters, they all like Kemp. But when you get to Trump supporters, they don't like Kemp. David Perdue is saying he can unite the party. But the way he's doing it is he's dividing up the party. The angst against Kemp has grown with David Perdue in. Interestingly enough, 10% of people say they're voting Vernon Jones. I didn't realize there were that many stupid people in Georgia. But nonetheless, I digress. Also, you should know, in the Senate race, Herschel Walker beats Raphael Warnock. Now, I sent it on an email earlier and I read it wrong, that Warnock beat Walker by 3 points. Actually, Walker beats Warnock in the Q poll and in the AJC poll. Warnock, however, beats Gary Black, the Georgia Agriculture Commissioner, by 5 points. But the question is, who beat Stacey Abrams? We need to stop Stacey Abrams from getting to a national platform. And the way we stop that is to stop her from getting elected governor of a state. And the only person the polling says can stop her is Brian Kemp. Do Republicans in Georgia snatch defeat from the jaws of victory? There's a lot of concern in the polling, given the angst David Perdue has stirred up at the primary level. We got to stop it. This transcends Georgia, though, because it gets to Pennsylvania, and it gets to Ohio. It gets to Arizona. We need to pick up Arizona and Georgia to take back the United States Senate. And we have to hold Pennsylvania and Ohio and Wisconsin, and we potentially can. In Arizona, Mark Kelly is not polling well. He loses to a generic Republican. There is one person who the polling makes clear can beat Mark Kelly, and that is Doug Ducey, the current governor of Arizona, who, by the way, is not a candidate for the United States Senate. But the polling shows if Doug Ducey were to get in, he's the most popular politician in the state of Arizona. If Doug Ducey were to get in, Doug Ducey would beat Mark Kelly. Doug Ducey has a statewide ground team in Arizona. Doug Ducey has a platform in Arizona. He's known in Arizona. He not only has name ID in Arizona, he has high favorable ratings in Arizona, except from Trump supporters. Interestingly enough, in Georgia, general election voters are more likely to vote against someone who has Trump's support than support him. 49% say they're less likely to vote for a candidate who Donald Trump supported. 30% say it doesn't matter. The minority comes from those who say it would support. Joe Biden's approval rating in Georgia is in the low 30s. His disapproval, 61%. We now know for certain why Stacey Abrams didn't show up on stage with Joe Biden, short of her having a doctor's note saying she had to have major brain surgery on the day Joe Biden was on the stage in Georgia. We can be conclusively convinced now that Stacey Abrams refused to show up in Georgia with Joe Biden last week because he has a 61% disapproval rating. Interestingly enough, voters in Georgia are less likely to vote for a candidate if Donald Trump supports him and less likely to vote for a candidate if Joe Biden supports him. And then in Arizona, you have Donald Trump already attacking Doug Ducey, who's not even a candidate. Donald Trump says he would come out against Doug Ducey if he got into the race. The polling shows Doug Ducey beats Mark Kelly, and the Republicans take the Senate. Do you want to take the Senate or placate Donald Trump? Generic Republican, interestingly enough, beats Mark Kelly. But when you actually put in the other candidates, they don't do so well. And Mark Brnovich does better than most. He's the sitting attorney general. He's the guy who got the big Supreme Court win on voting rights for the GOP. But his fundraising sucks. And then there's Nevada. In Nevada, this is a bright spot in Nevada. We could take Nevada. My friend Adam Laxalt is running. Adam's a good dude. Known him for a while. Donald Trump supports him. The Club for Growth supports him. The Republican establishment supports him. Nevada, with Adam Laxalt, may be the only real race in the country where everyone from Trump across the board supports one candidate, Adam Laxalt. They've rallied to him, and the Democratic candidate there is in real trouble. If we pick up Nevada and Arizona and Georgia, we get room for Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski to go wobbly, and we still do great. Then there's Ohio. You know, early on, I said I'd support Josh Mandel. I've known him. He's a nice guy. He was the state treasurer, but dude has gone off the rails. It's an embarrassment. His campaign is an embarrassment. And he's just out there just flailing about. It's the weirdest thing. I'm rather embarrassed to see the insanity in Ohio. There has not been a ton of polls about the Ohio race. The last one had Josh Mandel at 21, J.D. Vance at 15. Then you've got Gibbons, Timken, Dolan, and Marino in there, but that's a poll from December. Mandel up 6, but now there's more polling that suggests that the race is pretty well tied across the board with people, and Mandel and J.D. Vance are destroying each other in just painfully awkward stage performances. Josh Mandel has the backing of the Club for Growth. His campaign, though, is just, it just seems off the rails. We've got to hold Ohio. We need the best candidate in Ohio. Now, there are other candidates stepping forward in Ohio, and I don't know a ton about them, but I do think it's interesting. You've got other candidates who are trying to avoid the let me perform for Donald Trump's endorsement. You do need to understand that part of this is a performance for Donald Trump's endorsement, that they really want support. Matt Dolan is a candidate who's just come out in Ohio. I don't know anything about him. This isn't an endorsement, but I'm actually kind of intrigued by his take. Instead of trying to show that he is a populist, anti-establishment candidate, he's actually making his whole campaign about jobs and China.
We are in a Cold War, this time with China. And it's not just being fought on factory floors, because China wants to dominate the world economically and militarily. Washington has caused this, and Joe Biden's weakness makes it even worse. My priority in the U.S. Senate is to defeat Communist China by bringing back our jobs and renewing our strength in the world. Our economic and national security depend on it. I'm Matt Dolan, and I approve this message.
His message is conservative with results. I don't know him, but he's not beclowning himself on the stage. And listen, I'm actually really intrigued with J.D. Vance. And I know Josh Mandel. I've known him for a while. I'm intrigued with J.D. Vance, who was someone who, kind of like me, didn't support Trump in 2016, with more gusto than I would ever muster, is suddenly advertising himself as a Trump guy. You know, in Arizona, there's Blake Masters, who is, they're both with Peter Thiel, which I just find very weird, is Peter Thiel, who can't run for president because he's wasn't born in this country. Is he trying to get people in the Senate to advance his policy? I don't know. It's just very weird. He's got a big super PAC out. I suspect that's going to become an issue. Then in Pennsylvania, you've got Dr. Oz. You know, Sean Parnell, who I thought was an intriguing candidate. I didn't realize about his personal baggage. Sean Parnell is out. Dr. Oz has come in. Dr. Oz would be a terrible candidate. You know, he ran this thing the other day where he was in some market, and he says, I found out Pennsylvanians are patriotic. You mean you're just now, you want to run for the Senate in Pennsylvania, you're only now finding it out? Some multimillionaire or billionaire CEO has jumped into the race. A lot of Republicans are excited about this guy. I forget his name, but they're breathing a sigh of relief. They may have a credible Republican candidate running in Pennsylvania. This is Pat Toomey's seat. He's the incumbent. He's retiring. Candidates matter. Candidates really matter. This looks like it's going to be a wave year for the GOP. So a candidate who's not polished can still win. In Georgia, Herschel Walker is now in 2 public polls beating Raphael Warnock. He's going to be the Republican nominee. In Arizona, Mark Kelly loses to generic Republican. In Pennsylvania, the Republicans, they seem to be tied in generic balloting with the Democrats for the Senate. That's great news in Pennsylvania, given the background there. In Ohio, the Republicans still have an edge if they don't destroy themselves in nasty races. We can't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. It's time for Republicans to recognize we got to put our big boy pants on so that we can take this back and stop the Democrats and stop Joe Biden. He's going to get a Supreme Court pick. Will he get another one? Will he get more picks? If we control the Senate, we can stop it. But we got to get united, and we've got to start realizing that, sometimes we have our preferred candidate, and our preferred candidate may not be the candidate who's going to win. Can we rally to someone who's not our preferred candidate who has a chance of winning? And also, Donald Trump, can you stop trying to destroy the people the polls show actually are the ones who can stop people like Mark Kelly and Stacey Abrams? Please, for your own agenda's sake, stop trying to destroy the good candidates.